Should I, like, lean that way or just...
No, just up.
This is a letter that was written, an open letter to President Bush that appeared in the Thursday, August 23rd, 1990 New York Times. It was written by Alex Molnar. Dear President Bush, I kissed my son goodbye today. He is a 21-year-old Marine. You have ordered him to Saudi Arabia. The letter telling us he was going arrived at our vacation cottage in northern Wisconsin by express mail on August 13th. We left immediately for North Carolina to be with him. Our vacation was over. Some commentators say you are continuing your own vacation to avoid appearing trapped in the White House, as President Carter was during the Iran hostage crisis. Perhaps that is your reason. However, as I sat in my motel room, watching you on television, looking through my son's hastily written last will and testament, and listening to military equipment rumble past, you seemed to me to be both callous and ridiculous, chasing golf balls and zipping around in your boat in Kennebunkport. While visiting my son, I had a chance to see him pack his chemical weapons suit and try on his body armor. I don't know if you've ever had this experience, Mr. President. I hope you never will. I also met many of my son's fellow soldiers. They are fine young men. A number told me that they were from poor families. They joined the Marines as a way of earning enough money to go to college. None of the young men I met are likely to be invited to serve on the board of directors of a savings and loan association, as your son Neil was. And none of them have parents well enough connected to call or write a general to ensure that their child stays out of harm's way, as Vice President Quayle's parents did for him during the Vietnam War. I read in today's Raleigh News and Observer that, like you, Vice President Quayle and Secretary of State Baker are on vacation. Meanwhile, Defense Secretary Cheney is in the Persian Gulf. I think this symbolizes a government that no longer has a non-military foreign policy vision, one that uses the military to conceal the fraud that American diplomacy has become. Yes, you have proved a relatively adept tactician in the last 3 weeks, but if American diplomacy hadn't been on vacation for the better part of a decade, we wouldn't be in the spot we are today. Where were you, Mr. President, when Iraq was killing its own people with poison gas? Why, until the recent crisis, was it business as usual with Saddam Hussein, the man you now call a Hitler? You were elected vice president in 1980 on the strength of the promise of a better life for Americans, in a world where the U.S. would once again stand tall. The Reagan-Bush administration rolled into Washington, talking about the magic of a free market in oil. You diluted gas mileage requirements for cars and dismantled federal energy policy. And now you have ordered my son to the Middle East. For what? Cheap gas? Is the American way of life that you say my son is risking his life for the continued right of Americans to consume 25 to 30% of the world's oil? The free market to which you are so fervently devoted has a very high price tag, at least for parents like me and young men and women like my son. Now that we face the prospect of war, I intend to support my son and his fellow soldiers by doing everything I can to oppose any offensive American military action in the Persian Gulf. Troops I met deserve far better than the politicians and policies that hold them hostage. As my wife and I sat in a little cafe outside our son's base last week, trying to eat, fighting back tears, a young Marine struck up a conversation with us. As we parted, he wished us well and said, "May God forgive us for what we are about to do." President Bush, the policies you have advocated for the last decade have set the stage for military conflict in the Middle East. Your response to the Iraqi conquest of Kuwait has set in motion events that increasingly will pressure you to use our troops, not to defend Saudi Arabia, but to attack Iraq. And I'm afraid that, as pressure mounts, you will wager my son's life in a gamble to save your political future. In the past, you have demonstrated no enduring commitment to any principle other than the advancement of your political career. This makes me doubt that you have either the courage or the character to meet the challenge of finding a diplomatic solution to this crisis. If, as I expect, you eventually order American soldiers to attack Iraq, then it is God who will have to forgive you. I will not. And here is the article. Will it adjust?
As adjusted as it's going to get.
Okay, folks.
No war!
Now it seems like Alex Molnar is just a teensy-tiny little bit pissed off about the cavalier attitude that Bush takes towards his son's life. Now, we have a suggestion here. Are you pro-peace? Do you think there can be a peaceful solution to the Mideast situation? Do you smoke cigarettes? If so, you might consider aligning yourself with the Cigarette Addicts for Peace Now, or CAPN. We are a throwback group interested in creative peace actions. We oppose U.S. plans to starve the Iraqis, and we oppose the mindset that demands war as an answer. We also smoke cigarettes. If this sounds interesting to you, you might consider getting together to discuss the possibilities. Or you might want to just be a member. All it takes to be a member is to fit the above criteria and declare yourself a CAPN. For further info, call this station before 6 a.m. or between noon and 1 on Saturday. Sincerely yours, Captain Linda.
So there. Now on Blue Video. I want all you reservists. I want you to say no. Nancy said it. Just say no.
That's N-O.
N-O. It's so easy. No. Say, we don't want to fight in your war. Come on now, folks. Don't we know that American oil companies own 40 to 60% of all Arabian oil pulled out of the ground? American oil companies. We're not talking about British Petroleum. We're not talking about Germans or Italians or anybody. We're talking about Americans. These people that own Texaco, the people that own Amoco, the people that own Mobil Oil, all own Aramco, which is the organization which drills for oil in Saudi Arabia and Kuwait and Iraq. Every oil well in the Middle East is drilled by Americans. I have friends who went there to drill the oil wells. They get paid good money. They can't get drunk. They can't do anything, but they make good money and they come back with tons of it. American oil companies who just up your gas prices are the same ones who are upping the barrels of oil price. Understand, they're upping the price for a barrel of oil, and then they're charging you more money for your gasoline, and then they're sending your sons and your brothers to fight a war against somebody who says, wait a minute.
And your daughters and your wives.
And your daughters and your wives. I'm sorry, I don't mean to be sexist. I'm still stuck in the 60s, as they say, and I remember Vietnam.
So light up and protest now.
So come out and join us, huh? They'll let you smoke these suckers legally. You can smoke cigarettes, but you can't smoke reefer. And what's the difference? Well, these suckers have chemicals put in after they reap the crop.